And now for a very special session on India Today eMindRocks 2020. We're joined by actor, director, sportsperson, activist, and in many people's eyes, a thinking person star, Rahul Bose. Rahul, great to have you here on eMindRocks. Great to see you as well. Bulbul is something that everyone's been watching. Congratulations on the success of a wonderful film. How does it feel? Beautiful film, very, very deep, double role by you in it.
It feels wonderful on two levels. One is that people have appreciated the movie. There will always be some people who don't like a piece of art, which is great. I mean,
Yeah.
more power to them. But in the main, most people seem to have really been surprised by its aesthetics, by its texture, by the quality of the storytelling,
Yeah.
by the technical finesse of the film, but beneath it all, by the fact that it's a simple fable that so many of us have heard at our grandmother's knees, so to speak, at night or in the afternoon, as all the kids cluster around this wonderful aged storyteller, and she tells you these stories, and it's said in that way. It's like a fable, really. So on one level, I'm overjoyed that Bulbul has met with success outside of what the supernatural lovers would love.
Yes.
It's not really a horror film, so I can't call it horror lovers. But I think it's crossed. It's crossed to people like you and me who otherwise wouldn't gravitate. I don't know about you, Shiv, but I wouldn't gravitate towards this naturally supernatural genre film. The second, obviously, the more obvious reason why I'm happy is because people have appreciated my work.
Yeah.
But that's not the only reason. I've done as good, if not better, work in the past, which nobody has seen. Very few people have seen.
I can tell you
Whether
I
it's
have, but yeah.
yeah, whether it's The Japanese Wife or whether it's Oni's I Am, both of which I consider to be very satisfying performances for me. But
Yes.
people didn't watch it because of many factors. Most importantly, the fact that your publicity budgets are low, and if there aren't famous people on the poster, people don't come to the cinema halls.
Yeah.
So that's one reason. The second reason, Shiv, is COVID.
Yeah.
There's nothing competing for Bulbul's attention aside from other stuff on OTT platforms. So in that respect, there's a lot of attention being riveted onto anything new that's coming out, especially from the big platforms like Netflix and Amazon.
Yes.
And third is it's not a shabby performance, so I guess I'm just happy.
Not far from a shabby performance, and I agree. I mean, you've had fantastic work before as well, so not for a moment am I suggesting that this is suddenly a great performance. I actually happen to have seen a lot of those films that you mentioned. Rahul, no spoilers, of course, because people are still devouring this film on Netflix as we speak. But, in a film that's replete with very arresting images and scenes, there is, of course, one scene, and I'd like to just pick that out without putting out any spoilers. It's the moment when you assault your wife in the film. That's stuck in many people's minds. People talk about all that. I was in the newsroom just now, just before this interview, and everybody talked about that one scene just before this interview. What was shooting that scene like, Rahul?
So the scene has turned out to be mythic, but it was never that way for me. I was just playing Indranil. But with Jatayu and then the Sita Haran, the whole painting at the back, Raja Ravi Varma's, and the fact that you see the entire scene in an oval swing, a mirror from old with a frame, it's such a beautiful image.
Yes.
And then when you slow it down to, I don't know how many frames per second they slowed it down to, but it must have been about 100, 200 frames. Then, as it is when you slow even Chariots of Fire, somebody's running, and when you want to give it a feel of for posterity or a mythic feel, you do that.
Yes.
But here, my God, the combination of the art direction, the production design, the lighting, the camera work, and what I was made to do with the flecks of blood, it was just extraordinary.
Yeah.
For me, in fact, the toughest moment had come before, because in the script it says Indranil sees the embers and pieces of paper in the fireplace, and from there flutter up the words Bulbul and Satya, and so it reaffirms his growing jealousy and
Yes.
possessiveness. And then, he confronts Bulbul and smashes her feet to pulp.
Hmm.
Now, what? How do you go from anger and jealousy to incoherent rage and
Yeah.
violence?
Yeah.
So that bridge is I would think, 20-second bridge with
Right.
no words, nothing. So that for me was the part that really was challenging. That could I cross? Could I
Yeah.
foreshadow that this is the kind of guy he is without giving it away? And maybe sometimes your rage catches you by surprise also, Shiv.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, we curse people on the road, but suddenly if something sparks a kind of a physical confrontation, who knows what will pour out of us?
So very true, Rahul. I'm not going to dwell too much on Bulbul because I do want people to go out and watch it, on Netflix and watch the film and consume it. There's enough about it out there, and you've said so much about it right now as well. But since you mentioned some of your other work, I'm very curious. There's been Dil Dhadakne Do, there's been Pyar Ke Side Effects. But like you said, in Rahul Bose's filmography, there's also a 15 Park Avenue, The Japanese Wife, as you mentioned. Tell us about your method, your approach. How does it change as you move between, independent and the commercial worlds of Hindi cinema?
The change is only in pitch.
Hmm.
You have to, that's the director's job actually.
Yeah.
You have to attune yourself to the pitch at which the film is being played. If I played Jhankar Beats Rishi at the pitch that I play Indranil in Bulbul,
Yeah.
gone. I'll be lost.
Yeah.
He's like, what the hell were you doing in that film? Murmuring away, right? So it's a question of understanding the pitch that everybody is at. So Pyar Ke Side Effects and Jhankar Beats are at a heightened pitch.
Yeah.
Shaurya is two notches lower. The Japanese Wife is completely realist. So you have to pitch it correctly. And the director, you rely a lot on the director saying, whoa, that's not this film. You got to pitch it down. And that's what workshop and rehearsals are about. The second thing is also appetite.
Yeah.
I've always been a creature of appetite, which is after doing 3 comedies, even if the fourth one is stupendous and done by the Coen brothers, you're like, I don't want to do the fourth comedy. I want to do something hard. I want to do something visceral, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think the one that sticks out of the entire filmography is Dil Dhadakne Do, because I wasn't driving the film.
Right.
I was nowhere near driving the film. There were 5 superstars in the film. So I wanted to work with Zoya, and it turned out to be extremely fulfilling. She's one of the best directors I've worked with. All of that notwithstanding, Dil Dhadakne Do was a choice I made because I really wanted to work with Zoya, and I knew that her films, the budgets of the films, demand big actors. So this was as good as it was going to get.
Yeah.
But otherwise, generally, I asked myself, if my character wasn't in the movie, would the movie be the same? Would it have? And if it isn't, then it means that my character is playing a vital part in driving the movie. So the oscillation between art and commerce is in people's heads when I release the film. When I'm making it, as long as I pitch it right, my approach to the character, my approach to the piece, my building of the biography of the character, my understanding his world, the relationships that are happening, all my work for Indranil and for Sid in Pyar Ke Side Effects is exactly the same.
Right. While we're, Rahul, while we're talking about your films, and I do have a couple more questions about your films, and then we'll talk about some other stuff. Mr. and Mrs. Iyer is timeless. I mean, it's a film you can watch over and over again. It's people take different things away from that film even now. Is that, Rahul, the film that most people talk to you about in conversations when they're talking about your films? Is that the film that pops up the most? Or is it Jhankar Beats? Or is it anything else? The most, I mean.
Well, the most fame I have got from any film is Bulbul, precisely for the condition we discussed. But otherwise, prior to this, Jhankar Beats is a massive favorite with everybody who today is, I guess, 30, 35.
Yeah.
Because they were 15 or 18 when the film was made. And Mr. and Mrs. Iyer is a huge favorite for everybody who is maybe 35 to 50, because it appealed to an older demographic anyway. It wasn't a
Yes.
bubblegum film for 15, 16, 17-year-old kids. Having said that, I think that the the curious thing is both films have really built on their initial warmth and goodwill exponentially because of the fact that it's on television, you can see
Yes.
it, etc., etc. So in that respect, it's great. The only downside is when you do bad work, then it haunts you forever.
Very true. On Bulbul, Rahul, your first straight to digital film. As someone who has been an independent director, gives a great deal of importance to writing. How liberating has your experience been as far as this platform is concerned? This platform for creators.
Look, what can be in what way can it be liberating creatively? The fact that you can bash a man's skull in and not get it censored.
Hmm.
The fact that you can show two people making love without getting it censored. I'm
Yeah.
just postulating, right?
Yes.
But
Yes.
when I made a film called Everybody Says I'm Fine, and there is a lovemaking scene between Rehan Engineer and Koel, and in that lovemaking scene, there's zero nudity. It's just the
Hmm.
eyes. The eyes are shown.
Yes.
She's astride him. The eyes are shown, and the hands are shown. No skin. And the censors asked me to cut that scene. And I said, 1 second, what do I cut? Which part do I cut? They said, no, it's too erotic. I said, but you tell me what to cut, I will cut it.
Hmm.
So finally, there was nothing. So I think that violence, sexual, sex, these intense visceral emotions are best imagined.
Yeah.
So I personally have never felt constricted making Everybody Says I'm Fine or
Interesting.
Purna for the screen.
Hmm.
The Iranian filmmakers from the 80s and 90s will tell you they were corralled with constrictions.
Yeah.
And yet, what luminous cinema came out of that entire movement. So that's an extreme, but I can certainly say that if you require a scene of somebody's brains being bashed out or a flash of a woman's breasts, then you're not really telling a great story, are you?
True. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree with that. But I was interested in knowing because you're also doing two more shows on Netflix, Rahul. There's Bombay Begums, there's Bahubali. Can you tell us a little bit more about these? Anything new that one can expect from these shows?
Absolutely not. I can already see the red dot laser aimed at my chest from the Netflix guys across the bay. No, man, we are completely forbidden by contract to say a word.
Yeah.
I mean, you've even used three words that are entirely forbidden for us to talk about. So we can't say anything.
Okay, so quickly moving along then, and probably a good time to change track from movies to the other things that are important to you. Want to ask you a little bit about sports and rugby because that's been another very important part of your identity, Rahul. You were part of India's national rugby team. You helped give it quite a bit of visibility. I mean, rugby in many ways was associated with Rahul Bose for a long time, as I remember it. How hard was it, playing rugby and still being in films? Do you still take time out to play now?
To answer your last question, yes, I still do. At the peak of my rugby career, when I played for India for 11 years between 1998 to 2009, was pretty much the peak of my acting career. I mean, 2009 onwards, it began to drop off. So I would say at the time when I was doing Jhankar Beats, Chameli, Shaurya, Pyar Ke Side Effects commercially, at the time that I was doing Kalpurush, Ontohin, Onuronon, The Japanese Wife, all of this was happening at that time. So what I would do is I would mark out the tournament fixtures that India was playing that year. I would mark out 2 or 3 weeks prior to that for the India camp, a month prior to that, and a month after the 1 week tournament for injuries, hospitalization, stitches, whatever it might be. So I would take those two chunks of 2.5 months out from the calendar, that's 5 months gone, and I would program my cinema around that. So look, you only shoot one film a year.
Yeah.
Maximum 1.5 films a year. So that's what would happen. I would center my filming schedule around the tournaments that I had to play. And I would Never ever tell the filmmakers I was playing those tournaments, because every contract banned me from playing rugby. Otherwise, they wouldn't get insurance.
Yeah.
And I would lie blatantly, brazenly, shamelessly. But they
So
would
that you
get to
could
know
play.
because it would be in the papers that,
Yeah.
So then I would say, no, that's not me. That's someone who looks a lot like me. But and look, we share the same name, but that's not me.
What needs to be done to draw youth to sports other than cricket? I'm not saying we don't have champions in other fields, but given the
That's a great
comparison
question.
of cricket to the others, and you
That's a great
invested
question.
so much into rugby, what more can be
That's a great
done to
question.
pull people into that?
First is that every single sport that you want to attract the youth to has to be on mass media.
Yeah.
If you want on television, forget about it. So rugby is not on television. Indian rugby is not
Yes.
on television. If it's not on TV, it doesn't exist. It barely exists. So that's the first thing.
Hmm.
The second thing, and equally important, if not more important, is the fact that we feudalize everything in this country.
So true. Yeah.
If my head hits a book, nothing. If my foot hits the book, something. But my feet have served me so well, Shiv, in my life.
Yeah.
Without them, I'd be broke, literally and
True.
metaphorically. So if that's been feudalized, then sport was always first studies, then family time, then when we go on holidays or whatever, and then your sports.
Yeah.
Or if you get this much in your studies, summer vacation you can play. If you don't, tuitions. So when you have that kind of an attitude, then nobody is going to gravitate to any sport. And if they do gravitate to a sport, it will be the sport that is part and parcel of a child's life, a boy's life, especially, like breathing, which is, yeah, the boy plays cricket. That's fine. Cricket is fine. But if he's trying to get into tennis, or if he's trying to get into rugby, or if he's trying to go away and play football or hockey, that's a problem, because it's eating into his studying time. So what I've begun to do in a very shady, slimy way is talk to lots of parents and say, if you're obsessed with your child's academic performance, here's why she should play sport. Number one, sport makes you concentrate sharper and harder. So it's great for your child's studies.
Yes.
Number two, sport relaxes you. So you can actually, the child needs to sleep fewer hours, but sleeps deeper.
Yes.
And number three, sport teaches you how to handle pressure, which is what you need during exams. And a lot of parents start thinking, तो ठीक है, तो हाँ, तो कितना समय, ऐसे 1 घंटा तो लड़के को लड़की को खेलने दीजिए आप. अच्छा ठीक है, तो हाँ, ये तो अच्छी बात है. लेकिन वॉकिंग में नहीं होगा ना, ऐसे नहीं वॉकिंग में नहीं, उनको खेलना पड़ेगा. प्लीज उन्हें प्रोत्साहन दीजिए कि वो खेलें. So it's but these are the two main reasons: not being on mass media, not attracting the kids, and two, the idea that sport comes last in our lives. And finally, and this is a lesser thing, is that if the youth are not going to find a way of making money, of earning a livelihood through a sport, very difficult to do it. But if they say, if I play rugby, and rugby is affiliated to the police games, which makes me eligible if I play, which makes me eligible for a job in the police, or a job in the home guards, or a job in the national health, in the state health department or whatever, automatically it becomes a magnet for children to stick on. The stickability of these kids from 12 to 20 increases exponentially.
And I know young people are going to be looking at those words very, 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 very closely, because you're one person, like I said, who's...
I've been working very hard with the Rugby Federation, Shiv. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, I agree. That's why I asked.
I've been working very hard to get, the Federation has also been working very hard to get money in from sponsors to pay our national players. We've never paid them in our lives. I can proudly say that now, today, we have gotten a sponsorship from Odisha State, which we will announce in a big way, where the players, all our national players, women and men, will be paid, both for camps as well as for tournaments. It's the first step. Then we're looking at getting affiliations to national games, to school games, to, we have all those affiliations, now police games, so that all these youngsters can think of a job after this. So there are, 2 or 3 very salient areas in which I'm not teaching the game. That's the Federation doing a great job. In salient areas in which I know I can lean in and put my shoulder to the wheel.
Yes.
And the third, of course, is to treat men, women, boys and girls equally in on every single level of the sport across the country. And I, we can be pretty proud of the fact that we are possibly the most gender equal, gender
Yes.
neutral, gender agnostic sport in the country.
And Rahul, absolutely, and I applaud those latest developments as far as the sport is concerned. And I specifically wanted to ask you about rugby because you know it's not been a hobby for you. You've put yourself in it. You've given your years, you've given your time, you've given a part of your life to it, and it's still very much a part of your life. And that's the reason why people listening, most of them young, are going to be taking all of that very, very seriously. Now, we've talked about films, we've talked about rugby. I just want to share that, you know, one of your films, Rahul, that's actually had perhaps a more lasting effect on me than any other is actually Bombay Boys. I watched it in college. It was a very, very memorable film for me. I watched it on a little dinky little VCD. I think I still have it somewhere. There are just parts of that film that are sort of in many ways timeless for me. And your role in that film, it was very intense, it was sad, it was very, very memorable, but it also sort of established you in my mind, and I'm sure a whole generation, of a thinking person, a person who's sensitive, a person who's affected by things. So the young people of India would like to know and would want me to ask, what's on Rahul Bose's mind these days? You're also an activist. There's so much happening in the world and the country. What's occupying your mind and keeping you up at night?
I would say, without a shadow of doubt, Shiv, the images of Indians simply trying to go back home,
Yeah.
dying on trains, dying on platforms, dying on the road, dying exhausted 2 kilometers from home.
Yeah.
I mean, after 70 years, where have we come? Civilizationally, I'm not talking about economics and railways and GDP. Where have we gone, Shiv?
Hmm.
If we can't stop and feed or clothe or shelter Indians just trying to go home,
Yes.
or just let's not stop them, let's facilitate that. I'm not making a political statement. Indians died in hundreds trying to go home in 2020. I've never heard of someone dying on a train unless they had a deep illness. It's just each of those images of the kids being dragged, though each of those images to process is like it'll take months to process that.
Mm, mm.
The country was in a lot of turmoil before COVID.
Yes.
And you were expecting a lot of turmoil during COVID because of COVID. But this has got nothing to do with COVID. This is Indians trying to get home. Whatever the reason, drought, famine, unrest, nostalgia, it could be anything.
Yeah.
How does that, civilizationally, how do you say that one of the founding tenets of survival is not of happiness and joy is not people recognizing people's yearning to go home?
Mm.
Especially when you're lost and you're tired and you fear losing your family or not seeing them again. How does that play out? It's a horrible mirror it's shown to ourselves here. It's a terrible mirror.
Yeah.
I'm not saying don't do bulbul, don't celebrate rugby. I'm not saying any of that. But we're all connected here. This is not patriotism. We are all connected. Everybody's sorrow, everybody's joy reflects through the maybe many prisms through.
Yes.
But it does reflect. And we all heave a sigh of relief when we get to know she reached home.
Mm.
And we all feel terrible when we see he didn't make it, and that's his child sitting there.
Yes.
I mean, I'm sorry. COVID has come in phases in my life and in yours.
Yeah.
First phase, everybody's talking, everybody's thinking, okay, I'm going to do my cooking videos, I'm going to do my exercise videos, I'm going to make this constructive, I'm going to write a new book, I'm going to write the best play in the world, etc., etc., etc. Then you go into uncertainty. Then you go into disillusionment. Then you go into worry. And through all of this, it's bad enough. But to see this,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to rain on the
No,
interview.
not at all. There's a reason I asked. Yeah. No, Rahul, I mean, there's precisely it's because I know you're affected by these things that I asked. And I also know, like you said, with your foundation and with the work you do, you've also, invested time in, in non-governmental organization activities there. So I know this is something that affects you very directly. I also have some questions that I have to ask you. Some of our sponsors have sent in some questions. So I'm going to ask those to you now, Rahul. They all pertain to some of these things that we've been talking about here on this MindRocks edition. Priyansh Mishra from Galgotias University asks Rahul Bose, post-corona, since we're talking about corona but in a different context, what challenges, Rahul, do you think filmmakers and actors will face while making films going forward? We've seen some states opening up a little bit, things have opened up a little bit. What challenges will your industry face?
Oof, manifold. On the exhibitor side, it's a terrible challenge. To leave one seat or two seats is a death blow. And which producer who spent 200 crores making their film is going to want a full box office to mean 40% of what he or she was going to get earlier?
Yes.
Which exhibitor is going to be able to afford that given the high rentals, especially in our major metros? Sorry, which family is going to go? 7 of us are going to go for a film. It might just be Shiv, you and a loved one, just 2 of you, because you don't want to make it a thing, right? And if you're 7 of you and you're spread over 25 seats, what's the point? What's the fun, right? So it's all of that that's going to play heavily into the gloomy forecast for exhibition.
Yes.
Without doubt, it'll come back. Once everyone has a vaccine about 2 or 3 or 1.5 years from now, life will come back to normal because human beings are social animals. But till then, who will stand and who will not be able to withstand this crushing financial blow? That's the exhibition side.
Yeah.
Now let's get down to the shooting side. There are 2 aspects. Producers. The largest amount of working capital that's being held captive, frozen in the industry is today. There are so many projects that started. You hired a studio for 3 months and 2 weeks into the thing, gone. You're in the middle of post-production.
Yes.
Everything stopped. You're just started prepping and you've hired everybody. Now you have to let them go. You have to restart all. So they are in the production. Producers, this is a harrowing time for producers. Now, I want to start a project. Should I start it now? If I hire Mehboob Studio for 3 months and somebody on my unit gets COVID in the first 10 days, maybe the government won't shut the place down. But maybe Mehboob Studio might. Maybe the Bandra residents might. Maybe my lead actor might not come on the set the next day. So who's going to insure me? Right now, there's no insurance for this. So, it's no matter how many precautions you take, and I know shit that at the end of the shift, people go back home to Dharavi, to Varli Koliwada, to Prabha Devi where I stay, to Pedder Road, to Masgaon, to Goregaon, right?
Yes.
So who knows what happens the next day? You can't keep testing everyone every day. So it's a really tough. I'm a worst case scenario guy because if I can plan for the worst case scenario, I'm okay with anything that happens better. So as soon as it happened in March, both my NGOs, I shut the offices down. Everybody worked from home. I brought in protocols of working from home. I slashed salaries by 30%. And that was it. Nobody lost their job. But as far as cinema is concerned, I said to myself, 1 year. And I spoke to some very big producers at the time. And I said 1 year. And they said, no, not 1 year. Once things open up, people will start shooting. I'm like, I hope so. I really hope so. But March has become July. April, May, June, July. 4 months. Another 2 or 3 months. So the challenge is on the set now, the final part, which is actors, the guy who comes with the light meter near your face just before the shot, the sound guy who comes to adjust the lapel mic because your polyester shirt is causing a rustle. All of this, I am not masked. He's masked. She's masked. So as you know, you wear the mask to prevent someone from getting your infection.
Yes.
So they are being very considerate to me. But if I'm not masked before the shot, and I do not want to be wearing a mask 2 seconds before the shot. I want to be not wearing a mask a minute before the shot.
Right.
So I can be me. I can be the character as opposed to take mask off and start acting. I can't do that.
Yeah.
So I'll be unmasked. Are you going to come to me and fiddle with that mic? Are you going to come to me and and with the lighting, with the light meter? So these are such simple. Forget about kissing a heroine or intimate scenes or slapping someone on the back.
Just these little things. Yeah, I know. Absolutely. Yeah.
There are many people people have different thresholds. My threshold is like, listen, dude, as far as I'm concerned, I'm really moving towards creating some kind of immunity for myself because there is no way I can guard myself against everything all the time. But there are many people who have families, who have kids, so they have different responsibilities, and you have to appreciate it's not paranoia, their extreme search for safety. It's a tough time, yeah.
It is.
It's a tough F&B and cinema and entertainment. Oof,
I
really
can't wait to see how it actually plays out. You're right. March has become July. Who would have thought? And now we're all thinking about whether things are going to be okay before the new year. I've got time for one final question, Rahul. I do have more, but unfortunately, time only for one last one. Ashish Kumar from the Manav Rachna International Institute of Research and Studies asks Rahul Bose, Rahul, why are you not seen more often on the big screen? You did cover it a little bit, but he also asks, do you link not being on the big screen much to nepotism, which is a big subject right now in Bollywood?
Oh, I have a lot to say about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's got no, and it's the most unexpected answer that you'll get from me, which I'm not going to give you right now because it's going to be taken out of context. I'm going to write about this, Shiv, in about 6 months when it's not in fashion to talk about this anymore.
Okay.
And I'm going to write why I think what I think. But I have never in my career suffered from nepotism this way or that way. Right? Yes, Aparna Sen has worked with me 3 times. Yes, Santosh Sivan has worked with me twice. Yes, Dave Benegal has worked with me twice. Is that because, why? What do they gain from me? You know what I mean? So, if there's an example of a guy who is around 27 years later and slightly still, I won't say relevant, but still around, well then, draw inspiration.
Yeah.
It's so my views are very, very strongly and in a very nuanced way, I'm going to put it out, but it's not the views that people would expect from an independent actor who's not been from a powerful family.
Okay, so we're going to wait for that nuanced view, which is going to come out 6 months from now. We'll hold you to it, Rahul. Would love to know what you think. We can always expect something that's not quite to be expected, but that's Rahul.
I'll write it for your group.
Brilliant. So we're going to hold you to that, Rahul. Always a pleasure. Great speaking to you. All the best. Stay well, and hope to see you on screen once again soon. Thanks, Rahul.
Thanks, Shiv. I enjoyed this. Thank you.